Yeah, that's she's delivering a spirit amongst young girls. She's introducing. We've had a gangster spirit. The gangster spirit damn near wiped the young black males out. This spirit is fit to do a number on the young black girl.
Y'all, this isn't just another celebrity scandal. This is the kind of story Hollywood praise never sees daylight. Behind the red carpets, luxury parties, and flawless Instagram images, something far darker is being whispered about. And this time, the spotlight is locked on an insider who claims she knows exactly how deep the rot goes. According to explosive claims now tearing through social media, a well-known figure from the music and film world has triggered panic by hinting at serious, hidden health allegations involving multiple A-list stars. No names were officially confirmed, but the implications alone were enough to send shockwaves across the industry. Sources say these allegations point to a reckless, secret lifestyle, where power, silence, and protection mattered more than consequences. Private gatherings, risky encounters, NDAs, and a culture where image was guarded at all costs, even if others were allegedly put in danger. When the insider went live, her voice wasn't calm. It was emotional, angry, almost broken. She insisted this wasn't about clout or revenge, but about truth, accountability, and the damage caused when fame shields dangerous behavior. Almost instantly, the internet erupted. Fans questioned everything they thought they knew. Comment sections turned into war zones. And suddenly, old rumors, blind items, and deleted posts started resurfacing, painting a picture far more disturbing than anyone expected. But the darkest twist? Insiders claim the backlash wasn't random. Pressure mounted. Threats allegedly followed. And powerful figures began working overtime to discredit the messenger, not the message. Now the question haunting Hollywood is simple. If even a fraction of these allegations are real, how many secrets are still being protected, and who pays the price for that silence? This isn't gossip anymore. This is a warning. Buckle up, because this story isn't comfortable, it isn't clean, and it isn't meant to protect anyone's image.
I bet she got HPV. I bet she done had chlamydia, gonorrhea, trigonometry, cryopts, and whatever else that can contract. Hell, you talking about she too motherfucking nasty, mannish, filthy at the mouth, and she ain't got them high dollar weed. Everybody done tough.
What started as another late-night live stream turned into a moment that rattled Hollywood's walls. The kind of moment insiders whisper about but never confirm. The kind that makes lawyers wake up, PR teams panic, and powerful people go silent. At the center of the storm is a woman who knows the system from the inside. Not an outsider chasing clout. Not a random voice online. Someone who lived behind the velvet ropes, attended the private gatherings, and watched how silence was bought and truth was buried. When she spoke, her voice didn't sound rehearsed. It sounded heavy, like someone carrying secrets that were never supposed to see daylight. She didn't name names. She didn't need to. Instead, she described a pattern, a dark one. A culture where fame shields recklessness. Where certain high-profile figures allegedly lived double lives, hiding dangerous behavior behind money, power, and carefully crafted images. Publicly flawless. Privately untouchable. Her words landed like testimony, not gossip. She spoke about secrecy. About hidden encounters. About partners who trusted faces they grew up idolizing. And about how image protection allegedly mattered more than human consequences. As the live unfolded, viewers noticed something unsettling. She wasn't angry for attention. She was emotional, almost breaking, as if reliving moments she wished she could erase. She said this wasn't about destroying careers. This was about stopping a cycle that allegedly put innocent people at risk, while the industry looked the other way. And then came the reaction. Social media didn't just react, it erupted. Old blind items resurfaced. Archived interviews were replayed. Lyrics suddenly sounded different. Fans began connecting dots that had been dismissed for years as rumors. Comment sections became digital courtrooms, with strangers arguing guilt, responsibility, and silence. But the backlash didn't stop with the public. According to sources close to the situation, pressure mounted quickly. Calls were allegedly made. Warnings allegedly delivered. Her credibility was questioned within hours. Narratives shifted overnight not to address the claims, but to discredit the messenger. Because in this industry, reputation management often moves faster than truth. What made this even darker was her claim that this behavior wasn't accidental. That certain people allegedly knew the risks and still chose indulgence over responsibility. Still chose secrecy over accountability. Still chose protection of status over protection of others. She described an industry where NDAs are weapons. where private doctors, private parties, and private jets create a world with no witnesses until someone decides to talk. And when she talked, the cost was immediate. Online harassment followed. Threats allegedly surfaced. Her safety became a question mark. And suddenly, the conversation shifted from "is this true?" to "why would she say this?" A familiar tactic when the truth becomes inconvenient. But the most haunting part wasn't what she revealed. It was what she implied. That this wasn't isolated. That this wasn't one person or one circle. That this was systemic, a culture built on silence, fear, and protection of powerful men and women who were never told no. As news outlets cautiously reported without details, conspiracy theories exploded. Some called her brave. Others called her reckless. But no one could ignore the unease settling in because even without names, the story felt too real to dismiss. And then came the twist that changed everything. She suggested that the reason this story surfaced now wasn't coincidence. That she herself had been quietly blamed, targeted, and accused in private narratives, and that speaking out was the only way to stop being the sole villain in a story much bigger than her. Whether that's true or not remains debated. But one thing is undeniable. Hollywood didn't laugh this off. The music industry didn't clap back. And the silence from certain corners has been louder than any denial. This isn't the end of the story. This is the opening statement. What comes next may be impossible to ignore.
The rap game since he was little, just like Weezy.
Yeah.
And his booty been ran through quite a bit. They called him ass naked. Whoever his big daddy was threw him out ass naked into the hallway. He was walking around in the hallway holding. Has actually appeared on a magazine cover together.
Damn. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Always able to call other on being a swish. Birds of a feather flock together.
The night after the live stream, the silence felt louder than the outrage. No denials, no statements, no carefully worded apologies, just absence. That absence told a story on its own. Behind the scenes, sources describe an industry scrambling to regain control. Not to clarify facts, but to contain damage. Meetings allegedly took place in private offices, far from cameras. Phone calls were made that never showed up on records. Old alliances were quietly activated. Because when power feels threatened, it doesn't argue publicly, it moves quietly. The woman at the center of the storm didn't disappear, though many expected her to. Instead, she appeared visibly shaken. Her posts became shorter. Her tone shifted from defiant to drained. And those closest to her say the weight of what she had unleashed began to show in her face. She wasn't just fighting the internet. She was fighting isolation. Friends stopped answering calls. Industry peers allegedly distanced themselves overnight. Invitations vanished. Doors that once opened effortlessly were suddenly closed. Not slammed, just quietly shut, as if she no longer existed. What haunted viewers most was her emotional unraveling. She spoke less about exposure and more about regret. Not regret for speaking, but regret for believing that honesty would be met with accountability. She described a world where silence is currency, where loyalty is rewarded and truth is punished, and where those who break the code are made examples of. As days passed, online narratives shifted. Anonymous accounts began circulating counterstories. Old clips were reposted out of context. Her character was questioned. Her motives dissected. The message was clear. If the claims can't be erased, the messenger can be destroyed. But something else was happening too. Viewers started noticing patterns. Lyrics that once felt celebratory now sounded ominous. Interviews from years ago resurfaced with unsettling undertones. Blind items that were once dismissed as exaggerations suddenly aligned too well to ignore. The internet didn't need names, it recognized behavior. And that recognition terrified people who had spent decades perfecting images. The woman hinted that what the public saw was only a fraction. That documentation existed. That conversations had been recorded. That messages were saved not out of malice, but out of self-protection. World is dangerous. Her emotional state deteriorated. She admitted fear. She admitted paranoia. She admitted sleeping with the lights on. Because when powerful figures feel cornered, intimidation doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like being followed. Sometimes it looks like knowing too much and not knowing who still stands with you. And then came the claim that changed the tone entirely. She suggested that the reason her story exploded wasn't coincidence, it was reaction. That whispers had already begun behind her back. That blame was being redirected quietly, strategically. And that she refused to be sacrificed to protect a system built on denial. That statement reframed everything. Suddenly, this wasn't about exposure. It was about survival. Public opinion fractured. Some saw bravery. Others saw recklessness. But almost everyone felt discomfort because the story wasn't clean enough to dismiss and not clear enough to confirm. Industry insiders began leaking vague confirmations without details. It's complicated. There's more context. People don't understand how deep this goes. None of them denied the culture, only the specifics. And that was telling. As pressure mounted, her tone shifted again. This time, not angry, resigned. She spoke about consequences, about knowing that once certain lines are crossed, there is no return to normal. That careers don't end loudly, they erode quietly. She said she expected to be painted as unstable, emotional, vindictive, that those labels were easier to sell than accountability. And as predicted, that narrative began spreading fast. But what unsettled viewers most was her final implication. She hinted that what she revealed was only the surface layer. That the real danger wasn't individual behavior, it was institutional protection. That there were people whose job it was to clean messes before they ever reached daylight. And that some messes were buried permanently. She paused before ending her last appearance. Longer than usual, as if weighing the cost of the next sentence. Her eyes looked tired. Not dramatic. Not performative. Just exhausted. She said there are stories that destroy reputations and stories that destroy lives. And that the difference between the two is who controls the narrative first. Then she stopped posting. No updates. No explanations. No reassurance. Speculation exploded. Was she advised to stay silent? Was she threatened? Was she negotiating? Or was she simply overwhelmed by what happens when truth collides with power? Meanwhile, industry figures remained silent, a silence that felt rehearsed. No outrage. No lawsuits. No public denials. Just distance. And that silence created its own accusation. Because when innocence is obvious, it tends to speak loudly. The final detail, leaked quietly by someone claiming proximity to the situation, reframed everything one last time. They alleged that the next phase wouldn't come through social media, but through channels far less visible and far more dangerous. Not interviews. Not lives. Not posts. Records. And if those records ever surface, the story won't be about one person speaking out. It will be about who knew, how long they knew, and why everyone chose silence anyway. The screen didn't fade to black. It just went quiet. And in that quiet, one question remained unanswered: was the silence protection or preparation?
Both bisexual, they do weird things in their house, and young men have left their house screaming to get away from them in their mentorship. Meek Mill, Bashir Gray, left that house screaming. August the only one that stayed, and I guess he was really sick, he needed a dog.
The quiet didn't last. It never does. When someone disappears at the center of a storm like this, silence becomes a language of its own. Every hour without a post, every unanswered message, every canceled appearance started to feel deliberate. Not peaceful. Strategic. As if something was being decided far away from the public eye. People close to the situation describe a shift, not outward chaos, but controlled pressure. The kind that doesn't scream. The kind that waits. The kind that reminds you, gently at first, who holds leverage and who doesn't. What unsettled observers most was how quickly the narrative machine adapted. Entertainment blogs stopped asking questions and started using softer language. Commentators pivoted from concern to speculation about mental strain. Old interviews were reframed. The focus quietly moved away from what was said and toward who said it. That shift wasn't accidental. According to industry insiders, crisis containment doesn't start with denial. It starts with reframing. You don't erase the story, you dilute it. You introduce doubt. You turn certainty into confusion. And slowly, the audience begins to argue with itself. That's exactly what happened. Online debates turned vicious. Support fractured. The same people who once praised courage now questioned timing, motives, stability. It became easier to judge the speaker than to confront the implications of the claims. Behind closed doors, something else was unfolding. Those familiar with how power operates say documentation was quietly reviewed. Messages. Old agreements. Conversations never meant to be public. Not to release them, but to assess damage. To see who might be exposed if the silence broke again. Because this was never just about one voice. It was about what that voice could unlock. The woman at the center of it all reportedly withdrew from public spaces entirely. Not as an act of surrender, but of calculation. Those close to her described someone emotionally exhausted, but disturbingly clear-eyed. Someone who understood that the next move couldn't be impulsive. She knew attention had a shelf life. She knew outrage fades. She knew timing is everything. And that knowledge terrified the wrong people. Rumors began circulating that intermediaries had reached out. Not with threats, with options. Silence, distance, resolution. The kind of conversations that don't happen unless something real is at stake. At the same time, others claim warnings were delivered quietly. Not dramatic. Not cinematic. just enough to remind someone of consequences without spelling them out. Because in certain circles, consequences don't need explanation. What shook the public wasn't what was confirmed, it was what wasn't denied. No firm rebuttals emerged. No legal challenges appeared. Just vague statements about misinformation, taken out of context, unfair speculation. Words chosen carefully to avoid specifics. And avoidance, in moments like this, speaks volumes. Then came the leak. Not a screenshot. Not a recording. A description. Someone claiming proximity described material that allegedly exists, not sensational, not shocking in isolation, but cumulative. Patterns over time. Behaviors normalized. Concerns dismissed. Silence enforced. The kind of material that doesn't go viral instantly, but changes conversations permanently. The tone of the discussion shifted again. This was no longer about belief. It was about possibility. And possibility made people nervous. The woman reappeared briefly, not live, not speaking freely. A controlled message. Short. Measured. Almost legal in tone. She didn't accuse. She didn't clarify. She simply stated that truth doesn't expire, and silence doesn't erase harm. It felt less like a statement and more like a marker. A line drawn quietly. Speculation exploded all over again. Some interpreted it as retreat. Others saw warning. Those who understand how these situations unfold recognized it for what it likely was: positioning. Because in this world, the loudest voice rarely wins. The most patient one does. Meanwhile, the industry returned to business as usual on the surface. New releases. New headlines. New distractions. But underneath, unease lingered. People watched their words more carefully. Associations shifted. Invitations were reconsidered. Silence had altered behavior. And that may have been the point all along. The final development didn't come from the woman herself. It came from an unexpected place. An individual, anonymous and unaffiliated, hinted that processes had begun, not public, not performative. Quiet reviews, private examinations, internal conversations that never reach headlines unless something goes wrong. No confirmation followed. No denial came either. Just the suggestion that this story had moved beyond entertainment, that it now existed in rooms without cameras. What haunts this moment isn't outrage or scandal. It's uncertainty. Because if the claims were empty, they would have been crushed quickly. If they were harmless, they would have been mocked openly. Instead, they were absorbed, redirected, and buried under politeness. And politeness is often how systems protect themselves. The woman has not returned to explain. The industry has not returned to deny. The audience has been left to sit with discomfort. And maybe that's the most honest ending possible. Not closure. Not resolution. Just awareness. Because sometimes the truth doesn't arrive as a confession or a verdict. Sometimes it arrives as a pause long enough for people to realize that the silence they're hearing isn't emptiness. It's pressure. And pressure, given time, has a way of forcing everything hidden to surface. This is where the story stops being entertainment and starts demanding accountability. Because what you've just witnessed isn't a rumor spiraling out of control. It's a system being exposed by its own silence. No dramatic denials. No clear rebuttals. Just carefully managed distance and polished avoidance. And in an industry trained to respond instantly, that hesitation speaks louder than any statement ever could. The tragedy here isn't just one voice risking everything to speak. It's how familiar this pattern feels. How quickly discomfort turns into distraction. How fast truth becomes too complicated once powerful interests feel threatened. You're watching the cost of honesty play out in real time, and it's never paid by those with the most to lose. This isn't about choosing sides. It's about recognizing patterns. It's about asking why some stories vanish while others are buried under narrative noise. It's about understanding that when fame protects behavior, silence becomes a weapon. If this made you uncomfortable, it should have. If it made you angry, that reaction is valid. And if it made you question what you're usually told to ignore, then the message landed exactly where it was meant to, because awareness is dangerous to systems built on denial. So don't let this fade into another viral moment that disappears by next week. Pay attention to what happens next. Watch who stays quiet. Watch who distances themselves. Watch which conversations suddenly feel off limits. And most importantly, don't forget how this made you feel, because stories like this rely on public amnesia to survive. If you believe truth shouldn't be erased by power, make noise. If you think silence shouldn't outweigh harm, stay engaged. And if you want the full picture, the parts that don't make headlines, you already know what to do. This isn't the end. It's the pressure point, and pressure changes everything.